AI is a branch of computer science, a field that is being researched. And the idea is to create intelligent machines, and such machines would then perform tasks that require human intelligence, like seeing, visual perception, recognizing speech, making decisions, translating languages, or more complicated tasks like computer programming or any kind of task that normally requires human attention. So any AI system is basically an algorithm that is trained with data. So lots of data if you want to have a good AI. And the idea of these kind of systems is to make them be able to do predictions or decisions. Now, the ultimate goal of AI is to make human-like intelligence inside a machine and to improve lives with the application by, for example, virtual assistants, autonomous vehicles, or improve healthcare and so on. So that is the ultimate goal. And it all started with very basic AI systems like the game of Pong that you see on the screen. Of course, such an AI is very limited. It can only play Pong game and nothing else. And in the case of the Pong game, the algorithm is actually hard-coded. So all of the rules are literally programmed into the game. Now, of course, there's more complicated games such as chess. In chess, you can also do all kinds of things. You can make movements and then the computer would make a movement. But this AI, also, it can only play chess game, right? It's literally programmed to play chess. It's not trained on data, it's just literally programmed. So, of course, you can make your algorithm use data. If you have all kind of data fields, you can say, for example, if the temperature is low, do that, otherwise do another task. So based on the data, you can train the AI to have certain outcomes. And there are very limited systems. So a general AI or systems based on deep learning or machine learning, they learn from data. So you can feed it any kind of data and it will automatically learn the responses. Now, of course, such systems have much more capability. So it's sort of like the second or third generation systems. First generation is just writing the code, the rules literally. The second generation is from data, so models that from statistical models, so based on the statistics, can you make a certain prediction? And then the next model, of course, is based on neural networks. And so, okay, that is the introduction to artificial intelligence. And so where does this OpenAI come in? So a lot of this talk about OpenAI. What is this OpenAI? You can go to openai.com, and what this is basically a research group. So you'll see here research on the website, and the idea is to make AI systems. It's an American group focused on AI research and development. And they want to, of course, if just one group or person has this kind of power with AI, it will only benefit that group. So the idea is to have a more general benefit all of humanity by making it publicly available instead of just a small group of people. The OpenAI is actually an AI research laboratory. It's a non-profit one and was founded in 2015, so it's actually not that old. And the idea is to promote AI systems in a human-friendly way. And the main idea of activities is research developments in the field of AI. So, for example, language processing, which we'll look at into this course, and they also focus on robotics, machine learning, and other things. So next we'll look at ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an AI-powered language model developed by OpenAI. So as I mentioned before, OpenAI Lab lets you all kind of projects, and one of them is conversational languages. So ChatGPT is one of such systems, and it's trained on massive amounts of text data. So the algorithm is trained on that, and it's trained to generate human-like responses to questions. So you can feed it or prompt it any question, and it will feed you an answer or give you an answer. So ChatGPT can be used for a wide range of related tasks. So for example, generating text. Maybe you wanted to write an article to answer questions. So you can ask it a question and it will respond, relating conversations, but it even can do tasks that are more complicated, like writing an article for a website or writing a computer program. Can make it do all kinds of things, but it's only based on model. So for example, if you tell it to write a picture, it cannot do that. So it's not a general purpose AI, it's really based on text-based AI. And the goal of that system is to produce human-like responses. So with such a system, for example, you can build a chatbot, a virtual assistant, or a conversational AI system, for example, in a website for customer support. And let's create a chatbot with Python. So with Python, you can get keyboard input or user input using the function input. So if you do that, and you can ask anything, any input, and what it will do is will return a variable, whatever you type on the keyboard will then be stored in a value. For example, we can call it prompt, and then you can output it. So I'm gonna save this file, chat.py, and then run it. So if I now run chat.py, we can type some input, and it basically captures any keyboard input now. But we don't really have the chat effect, so what you want to do is that once you ask one thing and get an answer, you want to do your next question. So you can do that using a while loop. A while loop repeats if or based on the condition. So in this case, while true would repeat infinitely, and then you need 4 spaces for those 2 functions calls. So for those 2 statements, you need 4 spaces in front, and that means that this is now part of the loop. So these 2 lines will now be repeated forever. That's what the while loop is. And so now if we run it, we can type anything, and you'll see it keeps asking questions. So this is already more like a chat. Now to break out of it, you can use the Ctrl-C combination. So if you press Ctrl-C, it stops your program. Now, of course, now you want to have your AI system that responds to it. So in the old days, what they would do is based on the input, do a certain output. So they would program every rule literally. So for example, if input is hello, they would say hello. If prompt is equal to news or whatever rule, and so on. So let me remove this line here. That's how they would do AI like many years ago, like decades ago. They would literally program every rule of the system, and then you can run the program, and then you can of course type anything, and for those certain inputs it then did quote-unquote intelligence. Of course that is not real intelligence, it's just going through a list of rules. So of course maybe decision making, it could help a bit, but ultimately it is not real artificial intelligence. Later on with machine learning and deep algorithms, what they do is use data as just like humans learn from data. So in the case of machine learning that is based on statistics, for example, if you have a lot of statistical data, you can, based on the numeric values, perhaps the program can come to a certain conclusion. So it's then quote-unquote learning. And that's also what's happening with the deep learning AI. So in this case, the ChatGPT system is also based on a lot of data they program. So if they feed it new data, it can learn new things, and it's not stuck with old data. So this is a very basic chat system, and the old-fashioned way to make artificial intelligence system, and a very simple explanation. So of course, machine learning and with deep learning technologies, this gets a much more complicated. But the advantage is that the programmer doesn't have to define every single rule, because of course, if you want a computer or an intelligent machine that can have conversations, writing every rule or defining every rule is almost impossible, and then it doesn't have any memory either. It's never really like a real human when you're having a conversation. And it's also limited to just input-output. So if input is hello, then output is hello, or whatever you define it to be. As opposed to learning from data, then it can start with maybe small conversations and grow over time. So database systems systems is like what is trending right now, and the OpenAI systems are all based on data. So they are algorithms that learn from data, and of course they work in different ways, but they use that data to improve over time. ChatGPT is one of the programs that the OpenAI team has been working on. And before writing any kind of code, you can use chat.openai.com to try it out. So basically, this is a chat application. After creating an account on openai.com, you can ask it any kind of questions. So there are some examples here. And you'll see capabilities as well. So it can remember what you said earlier in the conversation and can do all kind of things. Now, there are some limitations. So sometimes it may generate the wrong information. And it's also limited to everything before 2021. So it's using a data set underneath, and that data set was generated before 2021. So anything that happened after that, it is unaware of that. Now, you can use this just like a chat application, so you can ask it questions. So, for example, question you want, it will take a moment and give you an answer. Now, it can be just based, or it's really general purpose. So, for example, you can ask it any kind of question. It will produce an answer for you. Now, it can be simple question answers. It can also be conversations or explanations about things. So, for example, you can ask it any kind of question about technology or other topics, and it can produce the output. Okay. Let's create a simple Hello World app using ChatGPT. So the basic idea is that you have input, output. So you will get a message from the ChatGPT server. So you can say ChatGPT with your input, and then you can output that to the screen. So that's how it would be in principle. But of course, it doesn't work exactly like this. This is an oversimplification. So first thing you want to do is to import the OpenAI module. You can do that with import OpenAI, and that allows you to communicate with the OpenAI server. Then you need to specify your authentication key. You can get it for free from the OpenAI website. So that's an API key that you need to look for. So openai.api_key, which is just a text value. And you can get that one from the OpenAI website and replace it with that API key. Next, we need to specify a model, so we'll use the default language model. That model is called Text DaVinci 002. Next, the input for the model. So in here we specified the input. So we can call it input or prompt. One thing to keep in mind is that input is actually a function in Python that gets keyboard input. So instead of input, we'll pick another name like prompt. Or you might call it query or whatever you want. Just not input, because input is also a Python function. Okay, so then we need to call, what you want to do is to call the ChatGPT system, and it will return the message, the output, and you can then print that message. However, calling the OpenAI model doesn't exactly work like this. So we can do OpenAI.completion.create. It's just a way to call the OpenAI system with the parameters we defined above. So these are just the default values. You can copy and paste them. Finally, you can get the response. So here we generate response from model, and here we get the response. So we say message is response choices 0 text. So that will get the response, and finally output. And so this is the basic Hello World program using OpenAI. So what we do is we load the OpenAI module. You need to install that, the pip package manager. Then configure your API key. So go to OpenAI website and replace it. The rest of the code will just run. So this is the input, the prompt variable, and this message is the output. So it outputs the response it gets from the AI conversational system. And make sure to open a terminal to install the package. So I'm just going to open a terminal here. And then we'll type pip install pip space install OpenAI. That will install the OpenAI module on your computer. So it takes a moment to install. As you see, it's installing it to the computer, the OpenAI Python package. And that's it. Now it's installed. So now the only thing left to do is to generate an API key on the OpenAI website. And so you can do that easily by going to the website. So that's openai.com/API. And if you're in that website, you can go to login or sign up. If you don't have an account yet, click sign up and then create your account. Once you created the account, click on login. Then log in with your email and password. And once you are logged in, go to the right top here and click View API Keys. Then create new secret key. Copy that secret key. And now that you've copied it, what you can then do is to paste it into your code. Make sure to open the program again with your code. And so open the development environment. And in the API key place, paste your key. We can then try to run the program. So if we type Python or Python 3 with hello.py, and you get the following error about the, okay, in this case, there's a small typo. If you get an error about OpenAI, that means that module is not installed. Otherwise, so in your code, make sure that what you actually return from the OpenAI system call is a response, because next we'll get the message from the response. So there was a typo there where it said message, instead should say response instead. So if we run the program, you'll see it gets from the AI system, which can be different every time you run it, right? So it's conversational AI, so given an input, in this case hello world, it gives a certain output. Of course, this can also be a question. For example, what is the capital of the USA? And it can be any question, and if you run it, you'll see AI system also supports question answering. So for example, now the responses are not so different every time because it's a question and there's only one right answer. But the formatting or the way it formulates the answer is different every time we run it. And so that is a very basic Hello World application. Of course, you can leave it just as Hello World if you want. And if you run it, you'll see the output. So let's change this old-fashioned program. And what we'll do is use the OpenAI system instead of these import rules. So we'll type import OpenAI, then define our authentication key. Then define the language model. Then this will be the same. However, we'll remove the bottom part. We'll get a response from ChatGPT. Okay, so here we get input. So this is just a function call with the parameters, with the default parameters. Okay, then we need to get the response. From OpenAI. So it looks a bit cryptic, but essentially it's doing the same. So the chatbot will now return the message. So what it's doing here is it gets user input and it sends that input to the OpenAI system, and OpenAI system returns the answer into a variable message, which it then outputs. So if we run this program, it will complain about the API key. So you need to define your API key. So let's see. I'm gonna copy my old API key. Then run the program. So now we can ask it any question or type anything. So it can be a question or just a sentence. So for example, it gave an answer here. You can ask some question and it will give you an answer in the English language. So that's the way it works. We have a simple chatbot. You'll see that it's writing some lines here before. You can remove those. So whatever you input, it gives you an output, but you'll see. Okay, I guess that was not a good question. Let's say we ask it a question, you'll see an empty line here, so you can remove that if you want with Python. So one way to remove it would be just start from the second line. So what this will do is cut off from the first new line, and that should remove that line. So this means first new line, and that is until the end of the file. You can also remove it. So now if we run it, see, it takes a moment for a response. Okay, it's taking a while. And okay, let me just, so now, okay, it's still doing that. So you'll see it's still an empty line there. So let's add one. And you'll see now the empty line is gone. Still takes a moment. So you see sometimes the responses can be really fast and other times the responses will be slower. but that's the general idea. So now we have a chatbot. There are several models you can choose from. So in these videos so far, we have used the Text DaVinci 002 model. This is data that is used by the algorithm. So as I mentioned before, these intelligent machines, nowadays they use data. So this is the data set that the algorithm is using. The Text DaVinci 2 set is the largest and most powerful generation model within the ChatGPT datasets. So that dataset is capable of generating human-like text and doing related tasks. Now, it's not the only model, so there are different models. There are several models available with ChatGPT, and these models are focused on language generation, but there are some differences between them. So another model is the Text Curry 001. So you can use that model if you want. That's a smaller language generation model, but because it's smaller, it is quicker. So for quick response times and having less latency, you might want to use that model because it's just faster. Then there's the model for the dataset Text Babbage 001. So that model is then optimized for question answering tasks. So it's able to answer questions. We can try that out. So let's run it. And you'll see answer, or the time it takes for a response, is much faster. So you can use that model if you want some question, if you have question answer tasks and you need faster response. Now there's also EA02. So that model is optimized for question answers and conversations. So the previous one was just question answers, and this model is trained, or a data set that also contains conversations. Now all of these models should be able to generate human-like. But some are faster than others because, of course, if there's less data, it will be able to give a response faster. However, if there's more data, the AI can provide more intelligent behavior. So, for example, if you have a question-answer set that it's using, it maybe won't be so good at having general conversations. So it really depends on what exactly you want to do. But there are different models, and these are just a few examples of engines available. So the ChatGPT, these are data sets that are available, these models. And which model you choose will depend entirely on your use case and desired output. And so, yeah, you can play around with different models if you want to.